Peace, peace, peace. It's Rakeem. With the Wise the Dome episode, I'm just going to be building on some of the things that I see going on in the I guess the current news cycle. You know what I'm saying? So um, obviously, one of the first things that we see is Joe Biden, right? And he's been in the news recently with another so-called gaffe when speaking about Satchel Paige, calling him a great Negro. And it's like, dude thinks it's like 1953 or something, right? Like, it's wild that this guy who is the so-called leader of the New World doesn't have good sense or understanding enough that Black people haven't been referring to themselves as Negro for decades. It just goes to show, part of the gravity of our situation here in America. We are suffering from an identity crisis. A lot of us don't know who we are and where these terms come from and why we call ourselves these things. So me personally, I prefer that you call me a Black man. That shit is hard and it commands a certain amount of power. There's nothing wrong with referring to yourself as a Black man or Black woman. W.E.B. Du Bois preferred the term Negro, but that was because they were being called colored at the time. And so, you have Marcus Garvey's newspaper was called the Negro World, and Carter G. Woodson created the Negro History Week. And you also had institutions like the United Negro College Fund. But when the 60s came around, Black was what was culturally acceptable and even in a sense rebellious, right? You had songs like James Brown, I'm Black and I'm Proud, and Kwame Ture screaming Black Power. It also shows that, to this day, there are multiple Americas, right? Like, nobody really understands the nuances of Black existence in this country but us. And it's not because the information isn't out there. I mean, they just don't really care, the president included. Not that any of us thought he would or should. Hell, even James Baldwin wrote a book called, and there's a documentary by the same name on his name, by Raoul Peck, called I Am Not Your Negro, right? And so it's just wild whenever we see a president who most people think is racist anyway, refer to a Black man as a great Negro. And also, liberal news definitely are spinning it in a way that saying that that's not what he meant, right? And nobody should be offended. Well, first, I'm not offended. I'm just pointing it out because he can't offend me because I know where he stands and what he is. But it's wild to see how liberal media, attempts to cover up the things from Biden and his administration that they crucified Donald Trump for, right? And this is not anything that is like on a pro-Trump sentiment, because I think they're both pieces of shit, right? So this is not that, but I always like to find the biases within the major news networks, because it's very interesting to see, because you see what direction they are leading the people, or the people that subscribe to their news channels or newspapers. And it's real. And so I'll pull up one of the articles. I'll share the screen, pull up one of the articles. Let me see. Let's go to, actually, hold on one second. So we'll do that. And so, here is Salon. and there are a lot of articles like this written about that instance. But it says Fox News under fire for deceptively editing Biden's speech to remove racial context from his remarks, by Megan Ellis. And it says Fox News recently removed racial context from Joe Biden's remarks on baseball legend Satchel Paige, making the comments appear to be racially insensitive. On Friday, November 12th, Fox News Rachel Compost Duffy claimed Biden was facing backlash for parts of the speech he delivered on Veterans Day at Arlington National Cemetery. During his speech, Biden spoke of Paige, who was a legendary pitcher in the Negro Leagues more than a decade before Jackie Robinson broke the Major League Baseball color barriers. In his comments, Biden said he had adopted the attitude of the great Negro, at the time pitcher in the Negro Leagues, went on to become the great pitcher in the pros in Major League Baseball after Jackie Robinson. His name was Satchel Paige. So that's the quote in full context. Like, what shit ain't no different than the edited version. And the edited version was saying Biden was heard saying he adopted the attitude of the great Negro at the time. Pitcher name was Satchel Paige. See, like, that's the thing. Like just call things out for what they are, right? But as we see, I want to say about six companies own 90% of major media in America. And this is the kind of shit that you get whenever you look at the news channels and newsletters and websites that fall under those companies' umbrellas. They're all biased, whether it's going to be far to the right or far to the left. But you know what your ears and your eyes show you. You know what I'm saying? It is what it is. But, you know, it's just one of many racially insensitive gaffes that Joe Biden has said, you know, from the time, we're not even going to talk about before his presidency, but there's been a lot while he's been in office, right? And they want to paint him as this, that's, you know, instead of, they want to paint him as this old lovable figure, right? Who's probably going half crazy. But he's the leader of the United States of America, allegedly, right? But they want to paint him as this old lovable uncle. See, like he's like their old lovable uncle, you know, the old racist uncle that they still invite to Thanksgiving, but he got jokes and makes everybody laugh. Like that's who he is, right? But it is what it is. I'm gonna stop sharing right there. And also in the news lately, moving on from Joe Biden, right? But also in the news lately, the Texas Republican State Representative Matt Krause, he sent a letter to the Texas Education Agency asking if any schools in Texas had books that he listed on his 16-page spreadsheet at their school. The list is about 850 books. 8% of those books are on about race and racism. That is a total of 68 books he wants banned in school that deal with the topic of racism. He said that he didn't want children reading them and feeling uneasy. I'm going to say that again. He said that he didn't want children reading them and feeling uneasy. So think about what that means, like with the clear mental picture. That means the understanding is that they don't even want white children even reading about the reality that Black children live in. I saw somebody post the other day about all these people who are on these school boards. You're like these old white women and old white dudes on these school boards are the same people that you know, were harassing people like Ruby Bridges whenever they were integrating schools, but now they don't want you to read about it, right? You know, it's wild, but in an essence, that is exactly what has happened. So it's wild, but it's not surprising. And that's why it's up to you to, you know, constantly read to your children and give them the proper knowledge yourself. They won't be interested in reading though if they don't see you reading. So it falls on you in that instance as well. You got to bind the books. You got to buy yourself books. You got to make reading a part of your culture in the house. That's the only way. And so if makes me wonder though, like if the book ban begins in schools, you have to ask yourself, like, will it ever spill over into public libraries, right? Like, what if, as we see, schools now and with this whole CRT thing are now one of the battlegrounds in these new elections. It's, a lot of Republicans are using fear tactics against their constituents and followers. We got to save our schools. We got to save our children. We got to, nobody needs to be learning about the real history of America. We got to keep kids being kids. So it makes you wonder, like, what happens if if like the next phase of that is, of that battleground or the public libraries. And I'm just saying that to say this. I suggest that you stack up on physical copies and begin to grow your own personal libraries. You just never know what happens in the future, man. You just never know. And so I would think that it is in your best interest to have something at home for yourself and for your children. Personally, I'll screen share again to show you some of those articles. So here it goes. Here goes the Texas Tribune. Texas House Committee to investigate school districts' books on race and sexuality. State Representative Matt Krause, a candidate for State Attorney General, asked school superintendents to confirm whether any books on a list of 850 titles are in the libraries and classrooms. A Republican state lawmaker had launched an investigation into Texas school districts over the type of books they have, particularly if they pertain to race or sexuality or make students feel uncomfortable. It's wild. Like, it's nothing wrong with being uncomfortable if you're uncomfortable because of the truth. That's how people begin to see the other side of things. State Representative Matt Krause, in his role as chair of House Committee on General Investigating, notified the Texas Education Agency that he is initiating an inquiry into the Texas school district context. So that's the whole state, yo. His list of titles includes bestsellers and award winners alike, from the 1967 Pulitzer Prize winning novel, The Confessions of Nat Turner, which is history. This is history, man. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't care if little white children become uneasy on something that is a historical fact, right? So teach your children about Nat Turner. Between the World and Me by Ta-Nehisi Coates, to last year's book club favorites, Hood Feminism, Notes from Women That a Movement Forgot by Mickey Kendall and Isabel Wickerson's Caste, The Origins of Our Discontents. Schools have until November 12th to respond. It is unclear what will happen to the districts that have such books. State Representative Victoria Neve, Democrat in Dallas, who's the vice chair of the committee, said she had no idea Krause was launching an investigation, but believes it's a campaign tactic. Exactly, it's a campaign tactic because they know this is what their people care about. They care about race, even if it's something like they care about race more than they care about poor whites getting themselves out of poverty. Like, they will cut off their nose to spite their face as long as it's something that negatively impacts Black people. And that's a fact. Also, we got in the news the Kyle Rittenhouse trial. I don't know much about the trial. I don't see it as anything that has anything to do with us as well. Yes, I believe he is guilty and wrong, but still, it's nothing that we need to be up in arms about. This is white on white violence. there are no white people outraged on black violence. So let them as a community sort that out. Don't waste your energy. You know, I also saw some say that if he's not guilty, it will set a precedence for them getting off when they killed him. But newsflash, they've been getting off unscathed for killing us since the days of plantation. And so I don't want to spend too much time on that. You know, that is what it is. Also in the news was Kamala Harris's approval rating at 28%, and Biden's approval rating is at 38%. To me, that's just not a reflection on how incompetent they are, because they are definitely incompetent and they're liars, but it's also a reflection of the Democratic Party itself. See, we already know where the Republican Party stands with us. You know, they thrive on racism, sexism, and classist legislation, right? The rich get richer and the white stay white. You know what I'm saying? But it's the Democratic Party that has most black and brown people fooled. That's why, you know, Malcolm X called the white liberal a fox. Now we see why he's a fox, right? And more people are starting to see that. More people are not falling for the illusion of what the Democratic Party stands for. Now we say how, you know, in the lessons it says he likes the devil because the devil gives him nothing. And so black people are literally the reason why Biden and Kamala Harris are in office, and they still have received nothing. You know, I don't see that changing, because once again, you know, Democrats use the black community to get what they want. Once they get into office, they give nothing back. And I think more people are waking up to that fact and are beginning to feel played by the Democratic Party. The Republican Party isn't the answer either. Now, I know some of these cats think it is, but nah, it's go listen to The Ballot and the Bullet by Malcolm. It's still relevant 50 years later. This is criticism on and critique on both parties. This two-party system obviously doesn't work. Both parties represent white supremacy, white domination. One is just more in your face and one is more subtle with it. And I'll show you an article on, you know, on that as well. All right, CNN commentators fume after CNN report on Kamala Harris office dysfunction. I had to push back heavily. And that's another thing, how media helps to shape and mold, or media does shape and mold most people's understanding on what's happening within politics. The people that watch CNN, MSNBC, they are quote unquote liberal in their thinking, and they're going to back anything liberal, and including if it's wrong. Fox News, the same thing, but just on the right wing. And so when I guess a piece had been run about the dysfunction of Kamala Harris's and Joe Biden's administration, and seeing by CNN and other CNN analysts push back heavily. Defenders and people who care about Harris are getting frantic, CNN's Edward Isaac Dover and Jasmine Wright reported, adding she's perceived to be in such a weak position that top Democrats in and outside of Washington have begun to speculate privately, asking each other why the White House has allowed her to become so hobbled in the public consciousness, at least how they see it, right? But I don't think she was liked really that much in the beginning in the first place. I have a larger issue with the tone and tenor by which Kamala Harris is covered, and I think that we saw that in this article. He said, I want to push back heavily on this article and throw a little cold water on it. I spent a little time with the vice president's office and no one's frantic, but more importantly, she's got back from a flawless overseas trip to France dealing with a very prickly issue where we had some freezing of our diplomatic relations with France, and she by all means performed extremely well. So it's just pieces to repair her image, but nobody gives a shit. I mean, it just is what it is. Nobody cares, man. You know what I'm saying? Like, America is being seen for what it is at this point. There's not really much to do to save it. We just have to build our communities the way we can. Like his brother, I had a show with Brother Diallo, and he said, man, you can't vote with your heart, meaning that you should still vote for things that would make the lives of Black and brown people easier. But you cannot care and love these politicians like that, because they are not us and they are proven liars. So you vote for the things that you want, but if your president or vice president that you voted for gets caught in scandal, then your heart shouldn't be affected by it at all, because you should go into it knowing that they're pieces of shit, and you're doing what you can do to make the lives easier, better for your family and people that look like you and people that are in the economic position that you're in. But you cannot care about the well-being of these people, because they don't care about the well-being of you, right? And so the last thing that I want to build on is how I built on earlier, as far as schools being a battleground in politics. But you gotta, with the other side of that is your kids, our kids are behind enemy lines, right? You have to combat that with what you give them at home. And we have to have communities that can pick up the slack for what some parents can't do. Dr. Asa Hilliard said, it doesn't take a village to raise a child. That's demeaning to the child. It takes a village to keep up the village. You know what I'm saying? So they have a stake. We all should have a stake in the children within that village. You know what I'm saying? And I know some are against the protests that they see that these kids are having in school, but I love to see it, man. I love to see the youth care about these issues and care about their future like that. Like I was saying, I love to see the youth take control of their own future and what matters to them. And you see, there have been several protests where this week actually, and last week, where students walked out of school protesting different issues involving racism within the school. And so these schools aren't designed to bring the best out of Black children and non-white children. It often kills their self-esteem and imagination. It also, got them thinking that getting a job and making some white man rich is the American dream. But as you can see, all of that is crumbling. The illusion, right? The illusion is fading. It's the old folks who are holding on to it. They want to believe that you can reform the weak and wicked, but you can't. You know what I'm saying? So they want to believe that the good in these people just has to be brought out. But we've already seen that that's not going to happen. And so I like to see the youth doing that. I'll show you something real quick before I head out. All right, and so like if you just type in school racism, right? Look at all the articles that come up. One, the most disgusting thing: Minnesota teen scared to return to school after being taunted by fellow student she exposed for posting a racist video. Perspective: if your schools won't teach anti-racism, here's what you can do at home. Another Boston Globe: very disturbing to all of us. Quincy public schools grapple with racist videos made by, I'm pretty sure it says, students. Police investigate new racist messages on social media at Bloomfield High, right? Like, that's happening all over the country, man. So, just prepare your children, let them know what time it is. You can do that without, taking their childhood and their innocence from them, but you can also make sure that they're aware and they're prepared, because it's real. And, make sure they know who they are. Make sure they know that what's going on in this world. Make sure they know how this country sees them. I mean, it's extremely important. But you know what I'm saying? That's all I wanted to build on. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. Peace.